Welcome back everyone to our Pixels vs. Polygons channel. I'm Mike Games, and usually we actually talk a little bit about the video game industry and things that are happening. But today we actually have a special little treat for you. So some people that have actually watched our videos have noticed that I have a figure collection in the background. So I wanted to do a little kind of end of the year showcase showing off my collection. So stay tuned. And before we get started, I actually just want to do a quick little shout out to Budget Stark, also known as Anthony Sang. He had posted up a video of how he actually wired up all of his lights. So it gave me an idea, and thanks to him, that's exactly what I did. So pretty much connected all the lights together, and with a flip of a switch on a wireless remote, I'm able to turn all the lights on, including a little cheap arc reactor that I made when I was bored on the left with my Iron Man 3 collection, and then on the right with my Superman, the Christopher Reeve Superman. I actually ended up wiring up the Fortress of Solitude crystals that he came with, and of course watching good old Uncle Rick Meister, Clipper King, while we're doing this. And moving on to the collection. And starting on the left is my Marvel shelf. On the very first shelf on my DTOF, I have the Avengers. And actually I forgot I had put, as a joke, Agent Coulson's head on the Hulk. I'm putting together Agent Coulson so I don't have the body, so instead of misplacing it, I figured might as well have the Hulk hold his head and kind of be a little funny. But yeah, so on the left is of course the Captain America from the Avengers. A really cool looking figure. I actually can't wait until the Avengers 2 Captain America. I think that one's probably going to be the best Captain America figure that's out. Then in the middle, front row, is of course the Mark 7. Probably one of my favorite figures. And then I got a custom made faceplate to make the eyes a little bit more narrower, make them look a little meaner. And off to the right, even though it's not from the Avengers, it's actually from Thor the Dark World, is Thor himself, the special edition Thor. And then of course in the back, the Beast, the Hulk, which, I mean, even though he's kind of plain, it's probably one of my favorite figures just because of the presence that he commands, because of how huge he is. And then going down to the second shelf, and on the second shelf I have a little bit of a mismatch, just pretty much the figures that kind of don't go with a certain movie. So on the left is actually my first Hot Toys figure, Captain America the First Avenger. I didn't really like the head sculpt that came with it, so I ended up using the Steve Rogers head sculpt that came with the Avengers Captain America. And actually thanks to Uncle Clipper, or Uncle Rick Meister, that's actually the first Hot Toys figure that I got. That was new. I was new into collecting. I started watching his channel, and after watching his review of that Captain America First Avenger, definitely made me want to start collecting. So that was my first figure. Then in the back is the Milk edition of War Machine, which was actually my second figure. Really cool figure, but as the years went by, yeah, I think I kind of lost a little interest, even though, you know, he's a really awesome looking figure. And off to the right is, of course, the Battle Damage Mark 7 Iron Man. And then since I have a few Iron Man, I mean, not too many, but just wanted to kind of show off the Tony Stark head sculpt, since the original Mark 7 on the top shelf has the faceplate on. Kind of wanted to show something a little bit different. And on the third shelf of my DTOF, I actually have off to the left Iron Patriot, which was of course the first diecast figure that I got, and compared to the previous Iron Man armors that I have, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a beast of a figure. It definitely has some weight to it, and definitely became one of my favorite figures. Right in the middle is actually Tony Stark that I put together. Didn't really feel like getting the Workshop Tony, and I just ended up, kit bashing it, and really happy with the way it came out. Off to the right is the Mark 42, which now that the Mark 43 is out, I have to say I'm a little annoyed that the Mark 43 is the exact same figure, just, repainted with the colors inverted. But yeah, the Mark 43 is definitely the Iron Man figure to have at the moment. I definitely think that's the Iron Man figure for any collector, especially since its diecast has a different feel, and the heft to it just really makes it stand out. And on my bottom shelf is another kind of mismatch of figures. Didn't really have anywhere else to put them, so of course, since they're the figures I'm least interested in, they're on the bottom shelf. So off to the left is another kit bashed Tony Stark that I put together, which is with a Mark 7 head Tony Stark that came with it, and ended up getting the Avengers clothes that he wore towards the end. Then in the middle is the Thor, the Dark World Loki, which, I mean, it got a lot of hate, but I think it's actually a really good portrait of Tom Hiddleston. It's definitely a really cool looking figure. Then on the right is Wolverine from The Wolverine, which I definitely have to admit that's definitely the best head sculpt of Hugh Jackman. I mean, that head sculpt is really amazing. It also got a lot of hate because of how dark the stubble was on his mustache, but I mean, once you have it in hand, it's definitely a really awesome Wolverine figure. Probably my favorite Wolverine figure, other than the fact that it's the only Wolverine figure that I have. And here's a quick shot of the shelf in its entirety. And pretty soon, I'm hoping to actually wire that up to pretty much get turned on as well. So I'm gonna wire it up instead of having batteries. Gonna actually have the hand and the Mark 42 light, pretty much everything light up all with wires instead of batteries, and control it with that same remote that I was talking about earlier. And on the top of my DC shelf, I actually have the Man of Steel himself, which was probably highly debated to be Figure of the Year last year. And I definitely have to agree. I mean, they definitely made some changes in the body, which really made the figure just stand out. And even without too much posing, I mean, just this neutral pose, he definitely looks really imposing and just, like the Man of Steel is ready to kick someone's ass. So yeah, definitely one of my top figures. And in the background, of course, have actually the box that came with the Christopher Reeve Superman. But since I wanted it to really pop, I, put the Man of Steel himself on the top and then the box in the back, just to, when people first walk into the room, that's the first thing they see. So yeah, really cool looking figure. And on the top shelf of my DC cabinet is, of course, Heath Ledger's Joker from The Dark Knight, which I have to say, it's also one of my top figures. The head sculpt on it is amazing, and with the purrs, since it is a DX, just really adds to it. And probably gonna end up changing the pose, kind of got tired of that. Plus it doesn't really go well with the background that came with the figure, so probably gonna end up changing the pose. But yeah, definitely the tailoring on it, since I believe Tony Mai actually helped Hot Toys with clothing. Just a really awesome figure. And off to the right, I actually have the Dark Knight himself, and it's definitely a really cool looking figure. I have lost a little of interest in it just because of all the other figures that I've gotten, but definitely a really cool figure. I mean, the detail on the suit itself is just amazing, and just have him, that's why I pretty much have him in a fighting pose, just ready to about kick someone's ass. Next up is kind of like the classic DC movie figures, which off in the back on the left is Michael Keaton's Batman, the 1989 Batman, which is one of the figures I actually got earlier in the year, so it was definitely a pretty penny since it's been out for a while and a highly sought after figure. I guess mainly because of the nostalgia, but it's definitely a really cool looking figure. Head sculpt definitely resembles Michael Keaton, and really a figure I'm really happy to have. And in the front is, of course, Jack Nicholson, the Joker himself. A lot of people argue that he's actually one of the greatest Jokers, but I have to disagree. Heath Ledger really hit it out of the park with his Joker. He just brought an extra dimension. But back in the time, Jack Nicholson's Joker was definitely really cool. And off to the right is the late Christopher Reeve. Still one of my favorite figures. I mean, the head sculpt on it definitely resembles Christopher Reeve quite a bit. And I ended up, as I was saying earlier, wiring up the lights so you could kind of give off a little bit of a glow and just add a little bit more to the base and the figure and the shelf overall. So yeah, this is the second shelf. And moving down to the third shelf is my Terminator shelf. So off to the right is actually the DX13 Terminator. Definitely one of my favorite figures just because of the high amount of detail in it. I mean, the bullet holes in the jacket, the flesh ripping on his chest and the leg. Just a really amazing figure, and the likeness to Arnold Schwarzenegger is uncanny. And off to the left is kind of a kit-bashed Terminator. It's parts of it's actually a DX10 body and the extra head sculpt and jacket that came with the DX13. So yeah, definitely a really cool figure, and really like that the DX13 came with the extra parts so you could kind of do a little kit bash. And on the bottom shelf is Mr. Eric Draven, Brandon Lee, The Crow. And it's definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. I could probably repeat every single line in the movie, verse for verse. And it isn't too popular of a figure, but I have to say it's actually one of my favorite figures, mainly because it is one of my top and favorite movies. But I mean, the likeness to Brandon Lee is really amazing. And the one thing I do, or that I don't like, I should say, is the shoulders and the body. That's why I kind of keep the jacket on and kind of just have that, infamous pose whenever he's walking into the church. Yeah, that's my crow. And then have the little crow off to the back, kind of swooping in, about to land on his shoulder. And then this is the shelf in its entirety. And moving on to my final shelf is actually on the very top, my Amazing Spider-Man collection, which of course just very recently put together, and I must say it's probably my favorite shelf, just because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. So on the very front on the left is kit bashed Peter Parker, probably the second kit bashed I put together. The first one was the Avengers Tony Stark. And I have to say, I really enjoy this kit bash that I put together. And then off in the middle back is Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man. And yeah, since it is smaller than the other figures, I kind of have him in a swinging type pose. That way you can't really see his size. And off in the back, on the right, is a figure that I'm really happy that I have. It's actually a custom head sculpt. I think he only made about 10 of them, and that's Craig Customs. So yeah, a figure that I'm really happy to have. It's the Vigilante Spider-Man, right before Peter Parker actually made himself the Amazing Spider-Man suit in the first film. So yeah, really glad and happy that I have that custom. Not too many people have kit bashed the Vigilante Spider-Man. Then on the front right is the Amazing Spider-Man 2, which definitely the best Spider-Man figure that's out there. I mean, the articulation on it is really amazing, and it does have that old school comic book feel, so since I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, it's definitely my favorite figure as of right now. And moving down, I have the Sideshow Darth Vader, which is also a really cool figure. Even though it is slightly taller and a little out of scale, I'm definitely going to be keeping it. The Hot Toys one hasn't really caught my attention. So yeah, a figure that I'm definitely going to be keeping, and hopefully it isn't too much out of scale compared to the other figures that Hot Toys make, because I'm definitely going to end up getting the Star Wars figures that Hot Toys making. So far I already have Chewie and Han Solo on pre-order along with the Stormtrooper, but then before Hot Toys announced they're taking over, I also pre-ordered from Sideshow the C-3PO and R2-D2. But moving on, off on the right is Darth Malak from the video game Star Wars The Old Republic. Even though I'm not too familiar with the character, I just thought it was a really cool looking figure and just really wanted it for my collection. And in the bottom is the Jedi Master Yoda himself, which, I mean, for the $100 figure, I think it's really cool, especially with all the accessories he came, you know, with a Clone Wars head sculpt, so a prequel head sculpt came with another head sculpt, which was more for, you know, the original trilogy, A New Hope, or Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. And moving one shelf down are pretty much a bunch of kit bashed figures. Yeah, I don't really like the Walter White right now, since I wasn't able to actually get the yellow chem suit. I actually tried to dye this one, and yeah, the dye just wasn't holding. There's just a few splotches that you could see are yellow, but yeah, it didn't work out too well. But moving on, off to the left is my custom Rick Grimes figure that I kit bashed. I added a bunch of blood on the shirt, hands, and so this is really a shelf of my favorite shows. So of course, Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead. In the middle, I have my kit bashed Walter White from Breaking Bad. And off to the right is Dexter, which is a really cool show. And actually the head is something that I painted myself, so for not knowing what I was really doing, since I've never painted a head sculpt before, I think it came out pretty decent. So yeah, these are all the 1/6 scale figures that I have at the moment. And just showing the shelf as a whole, up in the top, have some, you know, cheap kids helmets of Boba Fett and Darth Vader that are sound activated. On the very top is actually really cool print from my good buddy of mine, Eddie Nunez. So if you haven't heard of him, definitely look him up. He's actually done quite a bit of comic book artwork. So yeah, top shelf again, my Spidey shelf. And Star Wars shelf at the moment. And my custom kit bashed shelf of my favorite TV shows. So that's my collection, guys. Hope you enjoyed watching. And remember to, if you're into video games, definitely like and subscribe and check out some of our other videos. Thanks, guys. Till next time.